there it goes. So hi everyone. I am doing this 2-hour presentation. I did a 1-hour presentation earlier, and there's a recording that's available online. That earlier presentation was for people who've used the IBIS-Admin application before in the version 2.3, and it mainly just pointed out differences between 2.3 and 3.0. So that I just wanted to let you know that that's available, and I can send out that URL. I'll do it after we're done when I send out the link to this recording. I'm going to turn off my camera because I don't want to be saved for posterity, I don't think. If I can turn it off. Oh, well, there I am being saved. Oh, no, there it is. Good. Okay, so let's get going. So let's start with what's an indicator. Let's see. So as I was saying, there's a recording out there for people who are familiar with the admin system in 2.3. But you're welcome to stay for this presentation also. I just have a few slides at the beginning that go into some basics about what we're trying to do with IBIS indicators. So just to put indicators in context, a health indicator is a measure designed to summarize information about a given priority topic in population health or health system performance. Health indicators provide objective information, i.e. data. You can use it to compare geographic and demographic groups, to track progress over time, and they should imply some kind of action. So what are things that need attention that we can use public health practices to address? So typically, an indicator report is just one measure with one definition. For instance, low birth weight is a public health measure, a priority measure of an important population health topic. It has one definition: a live-born infant weighing less than 2,500 grams at birth. And we're not talking complex reports here. So it's not low birth weight plus prematurity, because a lot of low birth weight births are premature, plus infertility treatment and multiple births, because infertility treatment can result in twins and triplets and so forth, and those are more likely to be low birth weight. So it's not a complex report like that. It's one measure, one definition, with multiple data views. So you could have low birth weight by year, by county, by age of mother, or any number of other demographic or subpopulation categories. And the report also includes other contextual or narrative information. So of course the numbers aren't meaningful out of context. So that's why we provide some context to help people understand the data. So the admin application is designed to provide a way for you to organize and maintain this kind of information in your indicator reports. So on the IBIS site, in the new system, so I've got some screenshots here of the new IBIS 3.0 view application. We're making more of a point to drive new users through the topic pages to find information. So we call these, actually my developer calls these the big easy buttons, to allow the user to drill down to information that they're looking for that might be on the site. So if I click on health status, I go to a page where I can choose from different health status topics. And if I click on leading causes of death, I go to this leading causes of death topic page. And on that page, I can select from relevant indicator reports and data queries. Now, users that are already familiar with NM-IBIS can still use those top tabs to navigate the site. So here's the health topics top tab and mega menu, and you can see that leading causes of death topic page is on the mega menu there. And you've probably seen the standard indicator reports like this one, but what you may not know is that the new IBIS is a data system, and your indicator data can be used to get your message out in other ways. So, for instance, we have community reports on IBIS. These are, in the new 3.0 system, they're more data-driven, meaning that if we have data for indicators in the system, users will be able to view it in a community report, and it'll be easier to maintain because we don't have a bunch of XML files that we need to maintain to produce the reports. And I won't go into a whole lot of detail there, but this is what the community report looks like. We've never had community reports for small areas before, but now, voila, it just comes up because the data are in the system. Okay, there's also a feature that I haven't even used yet that will allow us to reuse our query and indicator report charts and maps and embed them in other pages. So for instance, you could create a story page, which is a web page that would allow the user to scroll through a story that you tell with your IBIS charts and maps. And you could draw these from multiple indicators. And for instance, you might want to tell that story about low birth weight, prematurity, and multiple births in a story page, if you have indicators for low birth weight, prematurity, and multiple births, for instance. You can also, in the new IBIS, create dashboard pages from query data. So this example that I have up on the right-hand side of the screen is a mock-up of a dashboard for the Infectious Disease Epi Bureau. Their query data are updated every night, and they want a way that they can track multiple diseases. Just go to one page and look and see if anything is going, way out of bounds, like what happened with hepatitis A earlier in, I can't even remember what year this is, but 2018, I think it is. Yes, because we aren't to August of 2019. We're done with 2019, right? Okay. Anyway, so you can make these dashboard pages off of queries or indicator reports. So what happens is the user requests the page, and then IBIS says, oh, I know where to find the pieces, and it pulls them together and displays them on the page. So now that's my context for indicator reports. And before I launch into this IBIS admin training, are there any questions or thoughts about what I've presented so far? Are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so let's launch. Using IBIS Admin 3.0. It's called admin because it's a way to administer your data and reports, indicator data and reports. So IBIS has three main parts to the software. And here's a schematic of the software architecture. The yellow is IBIS Admin. The blue is the IBIS View system. That's the part of IBIS that everyone sees on the public website. And the pink is IBIS Query. That software sits on a server behind the DOH firewall and runs the data queries against the SAS data sets. IBIS Admin, the yellow part here, has two parts. It has a relational database and a web interface. So the relational database contains the data for your reports. And when we talk about data for indicator reports, we mean all the numeric and text content in your indicator report, not just the numbers and the graphs. So we consider all that data in this context. So when an indicator report gets published, what happens is that the admin application pulls the relevant data out of the database. It formats it as XML, which is just a specially formatted text file, and it passes that file to the view application server. So these XML files that are used on the view application, in the view application, sit over here on that server, and when you publish an indicator, it just goes from the database, IBIS-admin, formats it, it actually tells the view application to request it, and then it provides it, and it gets saved on the view application. If the indicator report has already been published, then it will just overwrite the XML file that was already there. Publishing the report makes it available to the public users on the NM-IBIS website. Publishing puts a link to the report in the index and also makes the report available on the server. So this is the URL, and I'll send this out in an email. You don't have to start scribbling. And when you go to the admin site, you'll get this login page. And I just want to mention that we're going to be changing the name of the application to distinguish it better from the core software. The NM-IBIS Admin will be our version of the admin software, which there isn't much difference in admin between the core version and the New Mexico version, but in the view application there is. So it's just a new naming standard. But I will send this URL out to everybody when the name changes and the URL changes. And so just heads up, that may be an email that you can watch for, i.e. not ignore. Okay, so let's say that I'm Arian Coronado and I've logged into the admin application. So it looks like this once you've logged in. There's an indicator list. These are the 3 indicators that Arian is owner of. So you can see here that she's owner of these indicators. And that allows her to set up editors so that if she has people in her program who she wants to work, and she wants to have them work on her indicators, she can go to this page in the admin database and assign them editor rights, and they'll be able to edit using these indicators when they log into the admin database. So let's say Arian wants to assign Glenda and Nick to be able to work on this indicator report. Well, Glenda is here on the list, but Nick isn't. So for Nick, Arian will have to call or email me and ask for him to be added to this database table. So throughout the admin application, there's a lot of these pick lists or validation tables. And if you go to a table and you have something in mind and it's not there, odds are, it just needs to be added to the table. So, users is an example of this. There might be other titles, data sources, other things that you want to have available that aren't there. Just shoot me an email or give me a call and we'll get it set up.
And
okay.
Lois, it looks like
Sure.
Mary Shepard maybe is supposed to be the owner, and then we just had to list her to edit. Anyway, we should probably ask her which of those, if she wants them, if she needs to be the owner of a vital records indicator.
She doesn't, but right now you're the owner, so tag you're it. And if you and Mary want a different What? Want to set it up differently? Just let me know and I'll switch it around.
Okay, thanks.
Easy to do, easy to change.
Okay.
So here's Arian's indicator list again, and she can go to her report by clicking on this hypertext link. That will take her to the indicator detail page. But she could also use the radio selection button or the selection radio button and then click on any of the pages, and that will go directly to that page for that given indicator. So the first thing once you log in that you're going to want to do is to change the status to open. So it's a common question I get. You know, when to publish an indicator, we have to mark it completed. It used to be approved, now it's just completed, and then it'll have a status that will allow us to publish it. It's just a formality, but when you come in here and it's all grayed out like this, you can't edit it. And the thing you need to do is to set this status to open and then click the save button. And then that will save it and it will come back and all the text fields will be this bright white, and then you can edit. The next thing you're going to want to do is to update the updated on date or data as of. So this date is not automatically plugged in like when we publish an indicator report. It's intended to signify that this was the date that it was updated. Now let's say that we notice a typo 3 months down the road or a year down the road, and we just go in and change one letter. Well, that doesn't mean that all the data are up to date just because it has a new published date. So that's why we have this as a manual date, and you always want to just kind of make a note of that. And when you log in, and if it's not today's date or a very recent date, then you want to give it today's date. So the admin app has lots of open text fields that you can see here, and pick lists that I already mentioned that you use to supply the content for your reports. To start a brand new report, you need to work with me to get the initial records in the database. So we need to have a record for the indicator itself and whatever views you want to populate, data views, you know, by county, by year, or whatever. And then once the database is set up with those basic, you know, empty records, then I'll let you know, and you can go into the report and modify, add, or remove content, whatever. Brand new, you'd just be adding. And this may seem obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Each of the fields on this admin app, on these pages, correspond to a field in the database table that contains information that's used somewhere in your indicator report. So here's on this indicators detail page, the title field is the title for your overall indicator. And it's an open text field. You can change the title if you don't like it and you want it to read a little differently. You probably do want to keep in mind that this is the title that's used in the alphabetical index. So that's why we have birth outcomes first, because that'll group the birth outcomes together. But, you know, indicator owners are in charge of their indicators, and they can make decisions to change the stuff if they'd like. Here's an indicator definition, and here's how it appears on the page. Low birth weight infants are those, blah, blah. Low birth weight infants are those. So, like I said, it may seem obvious, but this is what we're doing here, is modifying data in the database so that it'll be used in the report. Okay, so you might notice that there are some tabs across the top of this page. We're still on this indicators detail page. This is one page, but it has been split up into 4 tabs, just so you don't have to do so much scrolling up and down the page. It just puts it, you know, a little more at your fingertips. So I'm pointing this out because one thing to know about the admin app is that it will automatically save your work when you go from page to page. So these left navigation buttons take you from one page to another, but it will not automatically save your work when you go from tab to tab. So there's a couple of these pages with tabs like this one, and just make sure that you save your changes when you're working in here. And if you make a change, you'll see a save button come up over on the left nav here. The application does time out after 20 minutes of inactivity, and it's not really obvious to you when it times out, like you don't get a warning or a pop-up. You just try to do something, and then it's like it's frozen up, or it takes you to the login page or something. But if that happens, then you may have lost the paragraph you just typed in. So, just be forewarned and save your work. Okay. Required fields are indicated by asterisks. Your report won't publish unless these fields have something in them. They have to be completed. There aren't very many of them. We've kept it to a real minimum, but we feel like the context isn't complete unless this information is provided. And then the other thing I want to point out on this page are the help bubbles. In the old admin app, we actually had a user's manual document. It was a Word document, and it went through this admin application page by page and had a blurb on every field with instructions for you. But in this new app, we've built the instructions, those instructions, right into the app. So these help buttons pull up a little drop-down box that includes that user manual type help. So if you're unsure of what needs to be entered, you can check the help bubble and get help text, excuse me, and hopefully it will be instructive. So two things just going on here, but I want to talk about this one first. Up here, this concise title. This is a text string, that is the base title for all of your graphs and maps. I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but I just wanted to point it out because it is here on this indicator detail page. Okay, so and then here is the help text for the why important text field. And I wanted to make a point of this also, that this why important is your elevator speech. You've only got 30 seconds in the elevator with your legislator, and you want to provide a brief description that will entice someone to read the report and convince them that it's important, that it's an important issue to health and well-being for New Mexico. So we want to try to contain these why important text strings to 100 or fewer words. And we've done the estimate or whatever, and from words to characters. And what happens when you're in one of these text fields, editing it is first of all, the background goes yellow, but that's kind of neither here nor there. But you also get this counter over here that tells you how many characters you've entered and how many characters are the total number that are allowed. So, it is a database. There are limits to the text fields. And so here is the counter, and down here it says suggested length, 100 or fewer words, which is approximately 500 characters. So here's a why important blurb. It's 368 characters. I think it's a very nice why important blurb, a very good example. And just, I haven't said this, I hope you understand. I'm pretty informal, and when you have a question, just speak up, or a comment or something. Yeah, please speak up and we'll address it. Okay, so now I'm still on this indicators detail page. I'm going across the tabs on the top, how and what doing, more context that you can add if you want. How are we doing in New Mexico? Usually that's, over time, or counties that may have challenges. How do we compare with the U.S.? You can put a text blurb in here. One thing about these is that they're time sensitive. So when you update your data, you need to go in and check and make sure that these aren't out of date with the new data that you're entering. And then what doing, this is where you can talk about your program's activities and, toot your horn a little bit. And I also wanted to just point out that these text fields have these little corner things that allow you to drag it larger. So originally I couldn't see all the text in here, but you can use this to drag the box wider and longer so that you can see all the text. And I want to encourage, going across again, we're on the next tab, more context. I want to encourage everyone to use these evidence-based practices, or this field, evidence-based practices, in the more context tab. Communities look to us for information on best health promotion practices. So that's one important reason that we have subject matter experts like you in charge of the content for these reports, because you know what the public health communications are that are important to get out to the public, and you would have the best idea of what evidence-based practices might be productive or effective in improving this health status for this indicator. So just a plug for that. Now on this other tab, still on indicators detail, some reports, some indicator reports, and we haven't quite decided how, what we're going to do by default, but one type of report has takes the user to a default chart, and then they can choose to go to other charts or maps or what we call data views from the default that comes up on the page. That's how IBIS, NM-IBIS works right now on the current 2.3 site. So this is where you would choose what data view you want to be used as that default for those types of reports. There's another type of report, if you've been on IBIS 3.0, looking around on the new view site, there's another report that's a summary that just has puts all of the graphs onto a single page. So anyway, in contrast, we have the one that starts with the default view. And then the other thing on this page, a couple more things I want to point out, but this organization is, and I've switched indicators here. Now I'm on alcohol, drinking, and driving among youth. And the organization that's in charge of this report, the subject matter experts for this report, are in the Substance Abuse Epidemiology Program. And what that does is it provides the footer information for this report. So every indicator report page has contact information in the footer, so that if someone in the public has a question and they want to contact someone about it, this is who they would contact. A couple other things, I guess, while I'm on this page, I'll point out is that this description field isn't put in the report. It's been used in the past to contain keywords for searches. So if you want to put extra keywords up here, you can. You can put whatever you want in there. It doesn't appear in the report. And then editor comments is another field that does not appear in the report. And this is for you so that next time you go in, you can remind yourself that, for instance, in 2018, I published provisional data. It needs to be updated when the final data come out in June or whatever. or I use it a lot if I get the US data off a website, and I'll put the URL or whatever query, if it was Wonder or whatever query parameters I use that might be useful when I try to replicate that query. So this is just information for you for when you go back to it next time. These other two fields, if you have, and this is not drinking and driving, but actually low birth weight is an indicator right now that's shared between maternal and child health and the Environmental Public Health Tracking Program. In the future, tracking is going to have, when we share these indicators, and they kind of have different requirements for what data views they need to publish, and they might want to name it differently, and they have different definitions, like low birth weight. And actually, I think it's a different indicator now that I think of it. There's an indicator for, I think it's prematurity, that's low birth weight singleton births, full term low birth weight singleton births. Well, that's not the classical public health definition. So we haven't wanted to put two indicators on that look like they're the same but have different data. What this does, because the tracking program uses the same admin database and XML, this makes it so that they can create their own indicator. They can call it low birth weight or whatever they want, and it will be saved. When they publish, it'll be saved to the server, because their indicator reports are served up from the same place that the public other NM-IBIS indicator reports are served up from. It'll be published, but it won't go on to any of the indexes, so the alphabetical list or the other indexes that we have now in 3.0. So it will hide it for us. On their portal, they'll have a special URL that they'll use. It'll pull out the XML. It'll be just a regular request like ours. It just won't appear on our alphabetical index or any of the other indexes. So that will hide the indicator. And I think that'll just make it easier for us. It'll give us more flexibility to do the things that they need to do and we need to do. We both need to do. Okay. Any questions so far? Oops, moving along. Available services. Here I have used the text button. Oops, the help button, I mean. And just showing you about available services. If there's anything you want to say, direct people to services, you can do that here. The next page, more resources. You can list relevant publications or websites. Like the cancer program might want to put the American Cancer Society links in here. Maybe they do. Okay, now related topics. So here's the help blurb for related topics. Select all available topics, or I'm sorry, all applicable topics. This will list your indicator on the respective topics pages on the IBIS site. So I think you know what that means. And here's the drinking and driving among youth. And we're going to put a link to this indicator report on the alcohol page and on the injury page. And I bet if I were to scroll down, there'd be a link. The substance use page would also be selected. So you can list your indicator report on multiple topic pages, just whatever applies. And right now, this is not, putting it on the topic page is still manual. I have to do it. But by your selecting the topics that you want it on, that tells me, I can go in here and look and make sure that I've got it in all the right places. Okay. Health initiatives. So we're over here on health initiatives now. This is a place where you can choose Healthy People 2020 objectives. Right now, that's all that's in here. When Healthy People 3030 is final, we'll put that in here. And you can select the topic, the Healthy People 2020 topic. We should make that more clear. Maternal, infant, and child health. You select that, and then you get this list of health objectives for HP 2020, and one of them is MICH 8.1, low birth weight. So that is what that is about, and that information will get put into your indicator report. And at some point, we can even have a data view, maybe, or we can, that shows New Mexico over time against the Healthy People 2020 and 3030 or 2030 objectives, targets. That's what that's about. Okay, related indicators. This page is really 4 pages in one, but it's a little different, organized a little differently than the one with the tabs. Maybe we should restructure it to make it have tabs. But right now it just has, the default is relevant population characteristics. So here's a blurb about population characteristics that are related to low birth weight. And then you can also choose whatever indicators, indicator reports you want to provide links to as related to low birth weight in the, let's see, how should I do this? Indicator reports that are population characteristics that are also related to low birth weight. So the way you get to the other the other relationships is with the drop-down box there. You can choose healthcare system factors, put in a blurb if you want about healthcare system factors, prenatal care, for instance, and then select the prenatal care indicator report and so forth. Go to risk factors and health status outcomes. So that's what that page is about. Okay, that's the easy stuff, I think. And I apologize, there's so many details. I wish there weren't, and it were really trivial to get this information out. But as you know, as EPIs, there are a lot of details that we have to pay attention to. And with Admin 3.0, with IBIS in general, but especially with Admin 3.0, we've built more of these details into the site so that because it's a data system now, instead of just a report, a place to store text for a report, we have to keep track of more details. So as we go, so the views for, and now I'm back to alcohol, drinking, and driving among youth. This is what I did my previous recording, my previous training session. I kind of focused on this indicator, so now we're back to this one. Okay, so what's a data view? Views list. A data view is a specific graph chart or map of your data. And then I wanted to point out here that, see, this is a title, but they look like what were subtitles. They look like subtitles, and they look exactly like subtitles that were in, that are currently in the Admin 2.3 system. So I'm going to talk about these a little bit now. And do you remember when we were back on the indicator detail page and there was that concise title? And I said that the chart and map titles were generated automatically. Well, excuse me, these view titles are used in generation of your chart titles. So this chart title consists of 3 different parts. This first part is the concise title from this indicator, general indicator page, indicator detail page. This is the view title that we were looking at before that looks like a subtitle by year, grades 9 through 12, New Mexico and US. And then there's a period title, 2003 through 2017. In 2.3, we were able to just type in period titles and put more information like odd years only or you know, different text in there. In 3.0, we choose the period title from a period dimension list, and we've come up with a list of period dimension values that we think covers everything. But again, with those pick lists, if there's something you need that's missing, let me know. So let's look closer at these views. So here's the chart for youth drinking and driving by county. And it also has a map. And the data view looks like this on the view list. So let's look at this county data view a little more closely. We have views, a view detail page that's similar to the indicator detail page, but at the view level. And again, you can get to the view detail page by clicking on the hypertext link, or you can just click on the radio button and go to the view page that you're interested in. So this is the detail page. And once again, it's one of those pages with tabs along the top because there's a lot that is being kept track of in this table, and we created those extra pages for it. So measure and period are on this page. These are associated with the data set for this indicator. So one thing about the new system, since it is a data system, every indicator report has its own little mini data set where all of the chart and map data values are stored. And it can have more than one data set. It often does have more than one data set. So this measure, percentage drinking and driving in this case, and the period for this view relate to how the data set is set up. And these have been turned off so that you can't modify them, but just so you know what they are. And if you think they're incorrect, then let me know and we'll make it work for you. This measure also controls the value axis title and map legend. So let's see, I think if we go back just a couple. So here's the map legend, percentage drinking and driving, and the value title, percentage drinking and driving. Those are both put on those report pages by virtue of what measure is selected here. So we can be pretty specific, or we can be more generic, like deaths per 100,000. It doesn't have to be lung cancer deaths per, you know, but I guess if you wanted it to, you could let me know and we would do that. The measure also defines a standard data note for a lot of measures. For instance, for this one, we could have a standard data note that has the question text for this measure. In fact, we should do that. But the other one I want to point out that affects a lot of you is age adjusted. So if the measure is age adjusted, we will put a data note under the chart, that standard data note that says data have been age adjusted to the US standard 2000 population, however that reads. So you don't have to maintain that data note for your age adjusted views anymore. You just need to make sure that you're using an age-adjusted measure and that you'll get that data note. Likewise, if you have a crude rate or an age-adjusted rate and you want to swap it to the other, you don't just enter the other data and put a data note, because if this measure that is selected is for age-adjusted, and remember, I'm going to say it again, this is a data system now, and the data that are in there, there's lots of details identifying what those data are. So don't replace your age-adjusted data with crude rates and then put a note underneath it or try to delete the note. You need to change the measure to a crude rate measure or vice versa. I know this is a lot of detail, so I appreciate your patience. Okay, period dimension. So this controls what time period dimension will be used. And so for this data view, we've got single years, because for the YRRS data, county data can be displayed for a single year. Data for a single year can be displayed by county. It's the data set has enough records in it that a single year will work for county. For BRFS, that's not always the case. And some of the death measures that are less prevalent or frequent, also, you have to combine years. So we've matched the measurement period to what was in your 2-3 data, what you use for your 2-3 data. So you want to look at this, and if you decide, oh, I used 3 years before, but I'd like to use 4 years because it's just not cutting it anymore, or I used 5 years before, but there's so many deaths for this cause now, I can drop down to 3 years. We can change that. Just, let me know, and we'll set that up. And then for these data notes, you're just going to want to preview your indicator report and look at the data notes and see if you still need this. This particular data note, for instance, is assigned now in a different way, and there'll be an automatic data note. So if you have data notes that look like this one, you're going to want to get rid of them. But again, just view your preview your report and see if the data notes are still making sense. All right. Now remember, I don't know if I did say this, but if I didn't say it, I'll say it. That automatic title, the title that's created automatically for your charts and maps, you can override it. Let's say that for some reason it's just not working for that data view. Here's where you would override it. You'd put in the complete title here that you want the system to use, and it'll use your title instead of the automatically generated title. Okay, so chart definition. It's also where you choose if you want a chart. You can have no chart if you only want a map, for instance, or you could use a horizontal bar. I've started using these vertical bars for the long lists because it's just, you can't, if it's a horizontal bar and it's a small area, the user scrolls and they can't even see the whole chart on the page. So anyway. And then narrative, you can put some text in here that will appear right under your graph or map. And a lot of times what makes sense to have in here is an interpretation. And here's a really simple interpretation. The rate was highest in these counties and lowest in these counties. Just something really simple for people who are, maybe freaked out by graphs and think they are not interpreting it correctly. Okay, map definition, similar. You choose, or the dimension, it should know already based on how your view is set up. But the map type, I have some new colors, yellow, blue, purple. I've set that as the default, but let's say that you don't like it and you really like that orange, yellow, red map from 2.3. You can change back to that color scheme if you want. And then I also want to point out, if you have a data view that's for US states, there's a map that zooms out so that the report, the map that's displayed, zooms out to the lower 48 states. So if you have that data view, make sure that this is the map type that you've got selected. Again, the 3 color schemes. There's a version that has all layers in the map that we use more for child care maps and maps that use the state legislative. So we have some data now by the state Senate and House districts. But I wouldn't use all layers in other cases because it takes a little longer to load those data into the report. And the report just takes a little longer to load. All right, this next tab, we're not really using these last 2 tabs. This is one where you can select an image to use on a data view page. There are a couple of you that do this. James Padilla does it for tobacco. He has a graph that we just couldn't do in IBIS, so he created it in Excel or some other program and took a screenshot, and we put an image instead of the IBIS graph. So just know you can do that if you want. But if you don't want to do that, you can ignore this tab. And then the next tab we're not using yet. It would be where you could define a whole different web page to go to instead of your IBIS report. So it would not the report, but the data view. It would replace the data view with content from a whole different web page. But I haven't even tried this yet, so I'd say just ignore that one. All right, here we go. So every indicator report has at least one data set. So I mentioned this before. It's a data system now. Indicator reports, indicators have their own data set. The data set is defined by it being an indicator. This is just the view. Oh, this is the view for alcohol drink drive youth. Thank you. That's the indicator. The measure, percent drink drive, and the data source. So the data sources, you don't have to select those manually anymore. We know what the data source is by virtue of the data set. And these data sets were set up from the 2.3 admin database and had to be created, but this is where what we've got. So there's 2 data sets here because this one, the data source is the New Mexico Youth Risk and Resiliency Survey. For this data set, the data source is CDC Youth Online. So for this indicator report, you'll have 2 data source citations. And another note about data sets is that it's assumed that within a data set, you can compare any 2 numbers meaningfully. So that means that we need a different data set for crude rates than for age-adjusted rates, because you can't compare the Mora County crude rate to the Rio Arriba County age-adjusted rate. So, that's another reason that when we would need to create a different data set, multiple data sets. So let's see. You no longer have to select numerator and denominator data sources. I mentioned that. And you can't modify this page. This is just showing you what's there and what's been selected. If you think there's a problem with how it's set up, let me know. Or if you have only age-adjusted rates and you need to create a data set for crude rates, let me know and we'll get it set up. So that's what that tab is. Now, I'm going to skip down to Views Records, because if you've used the admin site before, this is going to look pretty familiar. So we're looking at this county view for the drinking and driving indicator report. And here are the data. And one thing I want to point out, and I really want to emphasize this, if you've used the admin site before, you know for county data, we would just go in and replace these data with the new data. And then we change the title, say it's not 2017, it's 2018. But again, it's now a data system, not just a report, a place to store data for a report. So this information at the top is telling you that for this view, this data view by county, the period dimension is constant at 20, it's set at 2017, single calendar years 2017. Well, let's say that you want to enter 2018 data. You need to do that without blowing away your 2017 data, or don't just overwrite it, because the system thinks these data, whatever you put in here, is for 2017. And this title up here is letting you know that. These empty boxes are for 2017 data. But what would we do if you're encountered with this and it's like, I'm not sure what to do? Well, you could look at the help text, and I have to admit, in this case, it's maybe not all that self-explanatory. So that's why we're going into a little more detail. So the help text says, modify the constant dimension and constant dimension value using the views dimension and views dimension values buttons on the left. Well, that's a hint, but it's still kind of using jargon that's not communicating very clearly, I'm guessing. So if I go to the views dimensions page, like I was instructed, you can see some of the new vocabulary that we need. So period dimension and period dimension values are some of the vocabulary. Category dimension and category dimension values is another vocabulary item that we need to learn. Series dimension and series dimension values, and constant dimension. So we're going to take some time to go into this, and please feel free to ask questions, and we're going to do a little audience participation. Okay, so first, value axis with value title. This is a pretty classic type trend graph, right? So we've got New Mexico here in the turquoise and US in the dark blue, New Mexico and United States by year. We have a percentage drinking and driving over here on the measure value axis. So the value axis is this axis with the measure values and measure title. So if you've got the measure title and values, you know that's the value axis. Okay, so all of our graphs are presented as two-dimensional things, like a piece of paper, right? So there's always this value axis and one other axis, another dimension. And the other dimension is always the category dimension, always, always, always. So for this graph, the category dimension is year. Here it is right here. And the category dimension values are the specific years. So we've got 2015, 2017, etc. Okay. Sometimes the value axis is along the bottom of the graph, and the category axis is on the left. So remember, every graph has two axes. One's the value axis, and the other shows the category dimension. So multiple data points per category indicates that you have more than one data series. Another clue about series is that anytime a series dimension is used, there will be a legend with the series dimension values in it. So here we have the value axis over here. The category dimension is year. And multiple data points per category. So for this category value, 2013, we have 2 data points. That means we have more than one data series, and there will be a legend telling you what the 2 data series are. Okay, so value axis, category dimensions, series dimension, and series dimension values. I should say category dimension values and series dimension values. Okay, let's look at this county graph. Here's the value axis with the measure title over here. What are the county dimension values? So this is the audience participation point, so don't all talk at once. Can someone blurt out the category dimension values on this graph? What are they?
County.
Thank you. You get the gold star. Yes, counties. And then notice that we've added 2 more dimension values to this category dimension. These are not counties, but we've added those bars to this chart because we wanted to provide the comparison. So here's another audience participation question. How many data series does this chart have? So remember, if there's more than one data series, there's going to be more than one data point per category dimension value. So is there more than one data point for Luna County?
Do the confidence intervals count?
Nope.
Okay, then 1.
There's one data series. Good question. Okay, so what is the period dimension, the measurement period? I'm going to wait for you, so if someone wants to blurt it out, that would be good. So what's the measurement period for this graph?
$30 days.
Past 30 days. Well, that's an interesting answer too. No, it's 2017, but that is interesting. Measurement period past 30 days. Sorry for the ambiguous question. No, it's 2017. So these data were for 2017. The period dimension is single years, and the period dimension value is 2017. Is 2017, is that period dimension constant across all category values?
Looks like you had to use.
Go ahead.
Looks like 2015 had to be used for some cases.
Oh, that's just that this narrative needs to be updated.
Okay.
This is a really ambiguous test, isn't it?
Unless your U.S. comparison is. Sometimes the U.S. has a different period.
It does sometimes. But for all of the counties, 2017 is the period dimension value. These are all 2017. And you're right, especially for the surveys, because our data come out quicker. Well, for everything, we usually get our New Mexico data faster. But for BRFS, where we have to combine multiple years for counties, sometimes we can't, or I don't think we can, on the U.S. site, we can't combine multiple years, so the U.S. Value is often has a different measurement period. Okay, let's go to a different one. And where is the value axis on this chart? The value axis with the measure title.
At the bottom there.
At the bottom, thanks. And what's the category dimension?
It's race ethnicity, but then yeah.
Then we've added these two again, right? Yeah. So it's basically for the data for this graph, it's race ethnicity. New Mexico overall, U.S. overall are tacked on there. How many category dimension values are there? And again, depending on how you count them, if we don't count New Mexico and U.S., how many category dimension values are there?
Five.
There are five race ethnic categories for our category, and each of these is a dimension value for the race ethnicity dimension. Okay, what's the period dimension? The measurement period for these data is
16 to 18. 2016.
Right. It's a 3-year period from 2016 to 2018. And, you know, as far as we know, it's constant across all these values. It doesn't say anywhere, at least on this chart, that it's different for any of the category dimension values. So this is constant across all values on this graph. Okay, just a couple more. Where is the value axis on this chart? Is it on the left or the bottom? The value axis.
The y-axis.
It is. It's the left here. And what's the category dimension? What defines these categories here?
Age groups.
They're age groups, right. And how many category dimension values are there? Category dimension values. Someone speak up. I know you all know the answer. How many age groups are there? Although maybe you think it's a trick question because there are 2 values for every category dimension value, aren't there? But just for this category, age group, go ahead.
I thought, well, is it 2 because you have one each for male and female, or is it just 1?
There are 4 category dimension values. So the category is age group, and there are 4 age groups. So there's 4 category dimension values. And, you know, in the data, this is probably a 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So these category dimension values.
Right.
But what you were thinking of is the data series. So is there more than one data series? Yes. So we know there's more than one data series because each category has more than one data value. And we also know there's more than one data series because we have a legend, a chart legend. And the chart legend gives us the names of the data series dimension values. It's a mouthful. So what are the two series dimension values? What's represented in this graph for the two data series?
A male, female.
Male, female. There you go. Excuse me. And what's the period dimension for this graph? The measurement period.
Uh, 2016, 2018.
Yep. And is the period constant across all these values? So for each of these values in the chart, are they all from that same measurement period?
Yes.
They are, right? Because we wouldn't combine data from different periods that weren't comparable in the same chart, except that we sometimes do for the U.S. But okay, I think. Oh no, we've got two more, so we're going to go through them. Where is the value axis on this chart? Is it the vertical axis or the horizontal axis? Which axis has the values?
The horizontal.
Thank you, the horizontal axis. So if the value axis is the horizontal axis, the other axis has to be the category dimension. So this axis has the data category information and how many category dimension values are there. So the category dimension is race, ethnicity, and how many race, ethnicity groups do we have?
5.
5, thank you. So there are 5 category dimension values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, thanks for bearing with me, but this vocabulary is going to get you through this. Okay, so there are 5 category dimension values. Is there more than one data series in this graph?
Yeah. There's 5.
There are 5 series dimension values, and they are the mechanism of injury values: poisoning, motor vehicle fall, suffocation, and natural environmental. So there's 5 data points for each of the 5 category dimension values. So there's 5 data series. And again, what's the period dimension? Measurement period. Don't be shy.
2014 to 18.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a 5-year group this time, a 5-year period. And is the period dimension constant across all of the data in the chart? Does it change from one group to the next or from one series to the next?
No.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't change. So it's held constant across all of these values. All right, I think there's, oops. Just one more. Okay, same questions. You know the drill. Where's the value axis on this chart? Where's the measure title? And which axis has all the values for these points? So you can look and say, what is this value? If I were to look and say, well, if I wanted to know what this value is, I'd go over here, right? Looks like it's about 115 or something. So which is the value axis? Don't be shy. Okay, someone who's not multitasking, please answer where the value axis is. Do you want me to call on you? I'll call on you. Chris.
Oh, I was multitasking. Sorry.
That's okay. Where's the value axis on this chart? Is it the vertical or the horizontal axis?
Left vertical bar.
Thank you. So that means that the category axis is the other axis, and it's along the bottom. So what is the category dimension? And I guess there's a couple of right answers. I mean, one right answer is it's year, but it's also 3-year groups, isn't it? So is there more than one data series on this graph?
Yep.
Yep, there is. It's that race ethnicity data series again. So there are 5 series dimension values. American Indian, Asian, Black, Hispanic, and White are the series, data series. And what's the period dimension? The measurement period dimension? It's a little bit of a trick question, but it's the 3-year periods from 1999 to 2001 to the 3-year period 2016 to 2018. So the measurement period is essentially 1999 to 2018, but it's 3-year periods within that range. So is the measurement period constant? So for all the data values in this graph, is Are we using the same measurement period? Is it the same for this point as it is for this point? It's not, right? Because year or time period is the category dimension, and it changes with every category dimension value. So this is 2002 to 2004 is the measurement period for this point, and it's 2003 to 2005 for this next set of points, etc. So measurement period is not a constant in this chart. It changes as we go from left to right. All right, so thank you for the bearing with the audience participation part of the training. So let's go back to our county data view again. And let's see, just to remind you what that looks like. We have a bar chart with counties, and we also had a map with the county's choropleth values colored in. And we got to this page where we enter the data, and we got that title up here. And remember, we don't want to overwrite these data because they're 2017, but now we have, this is YRRS, so we have, let's say we have 2019 data. So we need to tell the system that we want to enter data for 2019 because we can't put 2019 data in here. So again, we go back to that text help and we say modify the constant dimension and constant dimension value using the views dimensions and views dimension values buttons on the left. Okay, so now we're a little more familiar with this vocabulary, and when we go and look at the views dimensions, we can see, okay, here are the dimensions that are being used. The period dimension, measurement period, is year, which is single years, and we're using that as the constant. So that's over here as a constant. And that looks good, right? We're good with that. How do we change it to 2019? Well, in this views dimension values page, we have here our category values, series values, and the constant value. So to change the constant value, we don't have any data series, just one data series. To change the constant value, we'd go to this constant value tab and we'd say, well, I want to go from 2017 to, I guess this should be odd years, but sorry about that. But let's say we want to change it to 2018. I change it to 2018 and I go back to my data entry page, and now it says, okay, this is blank. These blanks are now blank because we don't have 2018 data in the system, and we're ready for you to enter 2018 data into the system. Okay. So that was a long way around of saying, don't overwrite your old data, but use these dimensions and dimension values pages to set it up to enter your data for the new measurement period. Okay, now we go back to the views list, and let's look at this other view, views records. And here's the YRRS example with the odd years. And when Dan Green goes to enter the 2019 data, he'll come to this page and he'll see that, that it only goes to 2017, and he wants to enter 2019. So he'll need to add that period dimension value by going over here to views dimension values odd years, single years, and he'll check 2019. And there will be a place to enter the 2019 data. Now, I wanted to go back and look at this page again. So if this were a BRFS indicator, we would select this asterisk dimension value here because there's a break in the trend line. And if we select an asterisk here, it'll insert that break in the trend line. So that's just an interesting or an important detail for BRFS. And there's another asterisk between 2007 and 2008 for an indicator that needed a breakpoint for when we started using the new birth certificate. So prenatal care, the number of missing radically changed from 2007 to 2008, and so did the prenatal care, adequate prenatal care rate. So we have another one of these in there. So just when you encounter those, know that they're for a specific purpose, and you probably can ignore it. Okay, so now Dan can enter his 2019 data for New Mexico and for US. And this merge data feature is something that was in 2.3, and it works the same way in 3.0. So let's say that you have all of your data in Excel and you just want to paste it in from Excel. That's when you'd use this Excel merge data feature. So you click on that and it brings up this dialog box. And if you want to overwrite your data to correct incorrect values, you can select this overwrite existing non-blank data. But once again, remember, don't just overwrite your 2017 data with 2018 or 19 data. If there are already data on this page, that should be a clue that you need to add a year or modify those period dimension values. But there are instructions on this page. The column delimiter for Excel is \t, and it's going to start entering data on row 1. If you want to enter data on a different row, now these tables do have row numbers, so you don't have to count them anymore. And that should work just fine. Or you can just go in here, since it's just 1 year, and enter them by hand. One thing I want to point out, starting row to merge the data. So if you want to enter, if you want to paste it from Excel and only on row 9, you could put row 9 in here. And then the other thing you might encounter is this view values, views records page being split up. So if it's a really long list and you'd have to do a lot of scrolling, if the list is over some number of rows, it gets split up into the series, 2 data series. So we have a New Mexico series and a US series. And just be aware that you may only see New Mexico, but there's a filter up here and you click the go to next, or you drop down the box and you go to US to enter the US data. All right. And then you may remember that this county data view had a data note that had been used with the 2017 data. But now when we go into enter the data, that note corresponded to these asterisks. This is 2017. But for this situation, we're handling it differently now in 3.0. So there's this value, there's a value attribute table, there is a table in the database, a value attribute column where you can enter information about each value. So this would be how, this would be a place where we would use the value attribute for this information. So I would choose, I would get rid of those asterisks, and instead I would choose these value attributes. So there's one for survey suppressed, meaning there weren't 50 records for Catron County, so the value was suppressed. And it comes out, it puts text here, and it puts a note under the table when you use those value attributes. So you don't have to keep track and label those values anymore, but you do need to select the value attributes when you're entering the data. This feature still needs a little more work on the website because these are the unique identifiers in the table, not the labels or titles, but you get the idea. Okay. So now what you want to do is preview. And what I do is when I'm entering data, I usually preview each data view after I've entered the data just to make sure it's doing what I want it to do. But you'll also want to preview from the indicator detail page, and that will give you the summary page once you've updated all your views. Okay, so what do you do when you've finished? You set the status to completed. You send the preview URL for the overall summary report from this indicators detail preview URL. You send that to whomever should review the report. So if you're updating the data and the owner is somewhere else, or let's say that Arian and Glenda update the low birth weight data, but they want Mary Shepard to look at it, they can get the URL from when they do the preview and send that, email that to Mary, and she can just use that URL and look at a preview of the report. So once everyone is happy with it, then someone needs to send me, preferably the owner, needs to send me an email asking me to publish the report. And what I'd like is the indicator name, because that's a unique identifier for the indicator, and it's the easiest way for me to identify exactly what you're referring to. So when I say indicator name, on this indicators detail page, the name is listed right here. So you would send me an email that looks something like this. Hi Lois, these are ready. Low birth, WIT, and Pren care, thanks. All right, so I know that was lots and lots of details, and we went kind of fast in places, but I'd like to know what questions you're having at this point. No questions?
I don't think so.
Okay. The IBIS admin site is up and running and working, and again, I will send out the URL to the site and a copy of these PowerPoint slides. And once I get this recording online, I'll send out the URL where you can get that recording. And also, let's see, I have put that last recording, the 1-hour session that just goes over the changes on, let's see if I can find it, in the new NM-IBIS website. It's on the about, in the about section. We just kind of plopped it in here. I think that's the URL. Nope. There it is. So I'm guessing So this is the 1 hour video, or it's actually 40 minutes because I recorded it and was able to clean it up a little bit or speed it up a little bit. So it's a 40-minute video that covers a lot of that view values stuff and the category and series stuff. So if you want a quicker review than this recording, you can go to this video. I'll send that URL out also. And once I get this recording online, I'll probably put it on this page along with this video. So I think that's that. If you don't have a login for the admin site, let me know. I'll send you the URL and you can go. If you think you have a login, go and try to log in. If it's not working for you, shoot me an email and we'll get your login working, because that's kind of step one. And I guess that's it. So I really appreciate your interest and all of the hard work that you do maintaining these reports. I know the community really values this information. And like I said, as we're driving people through these topics, we're probably going to have a lot more people going to indicator reports that are on these topic pages. They're going to be easier to get to a little quicker and easier. So hopefully we'll get more traffic coming to your reports too. We had thousands of people view them last year, so tens of thousands. So it's good. So thanks, and I'm going to stop the recording and